Verse 33, taking him away from the crowd privately, can be interpreted variously as, firstly, Mark's desire to getting Jesus alone away from the crowds. Secondly, a part of Mark's messianic secret. Or third, the desire to avoid the curiosity of seekers in the crowd. Or as fourth, a means of preserving the secret process of the healing. However, Mark might have enhanced the motive of privacy. Here Jesus is bringing a suitable environment. So Jesus using the means, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears and spat and touched his tongue, which are two gestures which obviously relate to the man's condition. It appears more to be implied than that Jesus merely touched the man's impaired organs to establish contact. It was an act of offering, the hope of unbounding the social bondages, and even it summons biological healing through social touch, because at times even Jesus' words might not have been adequate for such healings and its fullness. The summaries of Mark 6:56 that all sick in the region of Gennesaret came to touch Jesus for healing, and Mark 3:10 the multitude at the Sea of Galilee, and in Mark 5:25 the healing of the woman with hemorrhage does highlight how touch is the means of healing. In the same manner, Jesus spitting connotes more than a gesture of word communication. Thus, each gesture of us can represent and be an integral part of our social healing and beyond the miracle of biological impediments. Even though the text does not say why Jesus spat or what he did with the spitting, now we do know that spittle supposedly has a therapeutic function in both Greco-Roman and the Jewish worlds. Even this is practicing in our own land too. In Mark 8:22-26 and in John 9:1-7, Jesus mixes his spittle with some soil and he used it to heal a blindness of the visual impaired person. In our world today, the tag of untouchability rebukes the right to speak and be heard. It is the state that makes the voiceless be rebuked to learn or to listen, not to speak, like many other social or religious bindings. Hence, the Dalits, Adivasis, and tribals at the margins who are identified as the untouchables always are made to be deaf and dumb. They are the theological impediment to healing themselves because of their vulnerability. In today's context, for people living in untouchable communities like mine in the Malkangiri district, the theological touch itself has become the need of the hour. The word untouchable and its bearing like exclusion, the unadaptability of person or a thing or a creature due to its birth or due to its being or vulnerable and becoming Christian need to be theologically challenged today. In the given, Jesus' model according to our text, we are called to be his followers, and that through our social touching need to practice a very liberating process. This theological model of Jesus always provides us with the complete and perpetual means to unbind all social bindings and to implement liberation for all the needed vulnerable ones. However, such social unbinding always warrants certain biological concerns. So, my second point is unbinding the biological bondage. Unbinding the biological bondage. In verse 35, describes the unbinding faculties of the sick person. His ears and mouth were opened to hear and speak properly. With the phrase, and immediately his ears were opened, his tongues were released, and he spoke plainly. This, the authority of the word connected to its action and reaction in terms of biological healing has certain theological implication. Indeed, such theological implications are needed in our immediate context, where people are in need not only physical healing but also holistic healing of society. The biological bondage expressed through the man's physical condition in two Greek words. Chorus means deaf and mogilalus means speaking with difficulty that describes speech impediment. This condition is further represented by the metaphor of the shackle of the tongue in verse 35. The Greek word desmos used here to express the shackle, but which means band, bond, chain, and sting. Is symbolic expression. The shackle of the tongue may mean it's clearly that it cannot power from outside restricting that part of body which is primarily related to the ability to express oneself and communicate with others. The shackle as a symbol of oppression has bound the deaf and mute man's tongue for a long time. Political control causes muteness like a patriarchal domination which imposes silence upon women. Mark frequently portrayed these kinds of linguistic others as either those who are mute and silent or as those who cry out and vociferate. Society views these colonial subjects as unclean and their abnormality indicates what is normal in the societal order. Some scholars imagine that the deaf and the mute man's illness, that is chapter 7 verses 31 to 37, is also related to unclean spirit connected to the legion in chapter 5. However, it is symbolic of Jesus' healing. The shackle of his tongue is released and his ears are opened. The journey of Jesus through non-Jewish territory was intended by Mark as an anticipation of the church mission to the non-Jews. Dear friends, the motive of our text relates to the Messianic age and brings loudly to us the acclamation based on the promise found in Isaiah 35, 5 to 6. He makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. As part of Isaiah's promise of the age of salvation, this acclamation by all people shows that their ears and their tongues can hear and declare the good news of the day of the salvation. This indeed in the sign of the coming of the reign of God and the very good news of God. In verse 34, looking to heaven combined with the sign introduces us two other gestures of Jesus. The identical phrase looking to heaven appears in the miracle of feeding. Yet, according to the word biblical commentary, we can see two statements that distinguishes Jesus' gesture. First, a gesture of prayer, and second, a thaumaturgic gesture of receiving superhuman power. From this, we understand that the context qualifies the phrases, meaning and blessing that follows. The words his side involves an action, a therapeutic gesture. Some interpret it is an expression of pneumatic excitement. So typically from ancient miracle stories, but this gesture associated with prayer represents a sign of deep distress. Jesus touched the affected organs and looked to heaven with a deep sigh and said, Iffatha, meaning be open. whereby the actual healing takes place through Jesus' authoritative word. There is no question for a Greek-speaking audience that the Aramaic command would be unintelligible. The commandment of be opened by Jesus is holistic, redeeming the individual and the society of bondage. When Jesus intervenes in their vulnerable life, for the voice of the oppressed itself is liberating when they shout loud before their oppressors, exploiters, and dominants. Jesus is creating a new generation of egalitarian or ecumenic community where there is no space for hate, untouchability, inequality, and other social atrocities. To conclude, I would like to call our attention to the statistics provided by Vikas Sir, the Additional Secretary and the Director of the National Health Mission. As on February 19, 2022, more than 5 million people are suffering from communication disabilities. Among them, a 4-year-old child also suffers with the impediment of speech and hearing. He cannot call his mom and dad and also looks at their face very helplessly. In fact, he was born with his parents after several miscarriages. As such, both he and his parents feel more pain